Welcome. We are here. It is Backstage with Geoffrey Morrissey. We are in actually the WATD studios today with Xenia Rubinos. Xenia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you're here for the Great Scott. It's your second show at the Great Scott, correct? I believe you had one earlier, like September-ish or something?
I was there in September, yes.
Nice. But you have an amazing album right now, Black Teri Cat. I read somewhere that there was not a lot of sort of albums or TV shows that helped you to navigate your experience when you were a kid. So that must have been something that you were really conscious of, I'm assuming, when making the record, that, you know, someone else might now have an album where they could sort of navigate their experience with your music.
Yeah, I think maybe what you're referring to is like my cultural experience growing up in America. My parents are from Cuba and Puerto Rico. I'm first generation, born in Hartford, Connecticut. So Northeast girl as well. And I lived in Boston for a couple years. Yeah, I didn't have that many people that looked like me that were examples of different careers or different lifestyles that you could have, other than my own parents, who were great role models and heroes, Shiro, of mine. But I think, you know, when I'm making music, I'm thinking, of course, about my own personal experience, but also about the music itself. I think that if, you know, people are able to identify with some of the themes I'm exploring lyrically and be inspired by them, that's great. But it's certainly not like the number one intention is my messaging. It's really my music.
Mm-hmm. No, certainly. And that's one of the things that the music, in a lot of ways, I was reading about this too, sort of the categorization of it, if I can speak today. It just sort of like people solely putting it in the box as Latin music or as protest music. And that's just sort of, I think, more one aspect of some of the songs. So what do you think the obsession is with sort of wanting to categorize your music and just sort of put you into like a box like that? Why do you think everyone's so obsessed with sort of attaching labels to your music and records?
Well, it's not just my music and records. That's just what we do with music. And because if you don't know what something is, you're going to be afraid of it. You're not going to know if it's for you. And you're not going to be able to tell someone else about it. So it's the job of journalists to learn how to describe sounds with words, and genres are usually the easiest way to do that. You just pick one and kind of go with that, and then people can latch onto it. So that's a challenge, I think, for any artist, not just for me. In my particular case, sometimes I have been put in the Latin box just because of my name and what I look like, and not really as much what the songs are or what they sound like. So that certainly has been frustrating. But on a positive note, there's, oftentimes journalists will come up with new ways to describe my sound that I think are exciting. Like just last week, I think a journalist here in Boston called it futurist pop, which I liked. That was a new one. So it's not all bad. It's just a process of figuring out how to talk about sounds.
Wonderful. And then so sort of moving from the sounds to more of the lyrical parts of the album, it's sort of an album that I feel like explores identity a little bit. And what a time to be making sort of that record, 2016. So walk me through sort of the timeline of it in terms of like rough dates of when this all sort of progressed, and maybe how the meanings have evolved over time. Sort of, recording or writing and recording part of this before the election, then it comes out, I believe, right before, correct? Like the week before. And then I'm assuming it must take on a little bit of a different context now after the election as well.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have anticipated the climate that the album came out in. It came out in June 2016, and I wrote a lot of those songs even years before, actually recording them. And a song like Mexican Chef, which I think is a song that resonates with a lot of people in a social way, was really written off the cuff, kind of as a joke with myself, and just laughing about the circumstance of this scene that I've seen repeated over and over again of Latinos working in the service industry in all different capacities, and being ignored and bending over backwards to make our lives really luxurious, and just kind of laughing at some of those lyrics that came to me. And other songs like Black Stars were also really inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the Mike Brown case that was just wrapping up at the time. And, that song in particular shifted meaning to me as I was finishing it up. Those lyrics and that song is one of the oldest songs on the album. I wrote that at least like maybe 4 years ago. And it's just continued to change meaning for me in time. And that Mike Brown case was something that really resonated with me and made me think of those lyrics in a different way. And ultimately, after the record came out, a lot of things went down in the country that I certainly did not anticipate, and I said were never going to happen. I was definitely quoted in an article saying, like, Trump will not be president, like, this is not happening. So things have continued to change, but that's what's so great about music. And I think when you're speaking to something of substance or something that you believe in or is a personal experience or just something that means something to you, it can be timeless in a way, and it can shape shift and take on different meanings and mean different things to people. So I was pleasantly surprised at some of the reaction that the album got, and I think it definitely had a timeliness to it that I didn't anticipate.
Now, as a writer, would you say that you're someone who sort of just ideas pop into your head, or are you more like reactionary, like this happened, I feel the need to write about it? What is your sort of writing way, if that makes sense?
I'm almost never reactionary in a literal sense. Like, I think sometimes after finishing a song, after performing a song for months or years, like I'll start to think about why that song exists or like why I had that idea. But most of the time, it's in that moment, it's literally unrelated to anything that I think I'm feeling or that I think I experienced. If that makes sense, it's more like a stream of consciousness thing that happens. And I play music because it's my way of figuring out why I'm here and trying to make sense of things around me, and it's the way that I can feel okay about being alive. So that's why I make music, and I really enjoy that process. But it's not usually reactionary. It's usually kind of improvised, and these ideas that happen when I'm improvising, and I try to piece them together and make sense of them later. It's like this puzzle pieces of this puzzle that already exists, but I just have to figure out what it is.
I like that. That's a really cool way to put it. And then, so one of the things, your album, Black Cherry Cat, has been out for a little while right now. What are some things that, after reading all the reviews about it, or, people coming up and talk to you after shows, what is something that people are either misinterpreting on the album, or what is something that people aren't picking up on that you really thought that people might, if that makes sense? Or something that people might be overlooking when they listen to the album?
Something they're overlooking? People that write about music or that report on music oftentimes talk about lyrics a lot, because it's something that's easily relatable to everyone, right? So it's just like, it's actually an art form. Writing is an art form, but it's more easily relatable than talking about like musical references, like sound references and things like that. So I oftentimes find that I haven't been able to talk as much about the music that inspired the record, or the production process of making the record. And maybe the explanation for that is that those facts are maybe seen as more niche or uninteresting to like a wider audience, and like maybe people assume that only like music nerds or like production geeks or something would be into hearing about that kind of stuff. So I think those are two things that haven't been talked about as much.
Well, I mean, the production of the record is almost always the most interesting thing. I find, just sort of when hearing about stories of the process. So what is your process like? Or do you self-produce? Are you someone that likes to work with others when you're producing your record, or how do you like to work?
In the writing, it's very solitary, but then when it's time to record it, I need collaborators, and I need feedback to piece things together, and to also do things that I'm not an expert at, like, for example, mixing and tracking an album, or putting together textures on a song or things like that. So on this album, I worked with Marco Buccelli. He's my drummer and longtime collaborator. We've been working together for 10 years. We actually met in Boston more than 10 years ago at this point, I think. And he was the one who really helped me shape the sound of the album, and take the songs and figure out like what the palette was really going to be, and stretch out. And we spent an average of 16 to 17 hours a day working on this album for 4 months. It was myself, Marco, and my engineer, Jeremy Lucas, so the three of us. And Marco and I did a lot of work in the months leading up to that, demoing every single one of the songs. So they were already recorded before we went into the studio. So we knew exactly how the songs went. We didn't really have like questions about like what parts are playing or what's happening, like what instruments are going to be. There were maybe a couple things missing, but we wanted to have as much of that decided so then we could think about the sound. What do we want that snare to sound like? And how do we achieve that? Or, you know, what do we want that vocal take to sound like, and what finding the right mic to use for that. So we were able to really work on details, which was such a luxury and so exciting to do, to be able to go that deeply into the sound of each song.
I wish I had that ear for detail. But
Me too. Marco does.
Marco does. Well, good. And it shows on the record, too. Like, you can just feel that it was made with care. So it definitely an excellent job. And then you mentioned Boston, too. You went to Berkeley. Is there anything you have to do when you're back in the city for a little while?
I honestly rarely have time to do anything other than play the show. Mm-hmm. So I wish I had time to, you know, walk around and see the city and see what had changed, but I don't really ever have time to do that. So maybe next time.
That's all right. Not too much changes in Boston, my personal opinion. So it's probably very similar. But one of the things that I sort of read about when you're playing a live show, and this was a quote, I believe, from an article from The Guardian, I feel the weight of what I'm saying, but it's fun. And I was sort of fascinated by that quotation. Explain that sort of like the two things, feeling the weight, but it being fun at the same time.
Well, you know, I get to play music, and that's an absurd thing to choose to do. And also, I do it because I love it and I enjoy doing it, and it's fun. And performance is oftentimes can have a more instant gratification or like an instant transfer of energy than you would with, you know, releasing a record or putting a song online or something. It's different because you have some people in front of you and you're doing this thing together. So that, I think that's the fun of it, where it's like you don't really know what's going to happen that night. You don't know who's going to be there, and you don't know how they're going to react to it. So that's kind of the fun and exciting piece of it. And I think some of the stuff, I mean everything that I'm saying on this album and in my performance, and some of it is, you know, from my personal experience or, you know, friends, things that I've seen around me, and some of it can be kind of heavy, but I like to balance, I like to skirt the line between I guess talking about these things that are difficult to articulate while partying and like having a good time. And I think that when you're able to laugh or make light of something, like you're more likely to succeed in communicating with someone that you don't agree with, or communicating about something that's difficult to grasp or difficult to understand. I love Louis C.K., the comedian, who's Bostonian, I think, also. Yes. And I love him because he's able to do that so well. He's a master at that, of bringing up things that are taboo to talk about, that are really difficult to grasp, but bringing them up in just the most hilarious, absurd way. It makes everyone laugh, but then it also leaves you thinking, you know? And it's it kind of instantly disarms you because you're laughing, you know, and he draws you in, but then he leaves you thinking about it. Like, I'll just keep thinking about this joke and be like, man, that's really messed up. What he said, like, damn, that's true, actually. So I'm inspired by that, and I wish I could maybe do some of that in my music as well.
Definitely, I think something that comes across, and I can only imagine how it does live, too. And then this will be one of my last questions. I know that you're out on the road, you're touring. If you could add one person into the tour van to come along with you for a day, who's hopping in the van with you guys? Oh, like, what do you mean? Like, it can be dead or alive, famous, like someone that you would either want to sit next to on a long plane ride to a show, or like someone that you just kind of want to hang out with for a day. Oh, boy. Maybe Busta Rhymes. Oh, that'd be a cool one. Because he would just be like, rah, rah, rah. And, you know, he would just
be like, hey, are we going to the show? Like he would, I don't know. I'm not good with voices. I shouldn't be trying to do a Busta Rhymes interpretation, but I would just appreciate that kind of fire vocal in the van would be like a good wake up call when I'm feeling drowsy or something.
There you go. The cure to drowsiness, Busta Rhymes. Well, and then just to sort of leave our listeners with a couple of new things to listen to. Who are you listening to right now? Who has your ear?
Oh boy. Sassy Black just released a new album last Friday, which I was just checking out. She's great. I've been checking out Hooray for the Riff Raffs album. I'm going on tour with them in the fall. There's a new Deerhoof song that just came out today, actually, which is great. It's off of their new album that's coming out this fall.
Which you're appearing on,
which
correct?
I'm also on.
That's awesome.
And I've got a sneak peek at the whole record, and it's so good. It's so good. So I've been listening to that. And we were just listening to some old school salsa, like Willie Colon and Hector Lavoe in the van. So those are a couple things checking out.
There you go. And if you are not listening to Black Terry Cat by Xenia Rubinos, damn it, you should be. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.